Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about Module 3 here. This is the textbook presentation, and I wish there was some way for me to recline my chair. I'm feeling like it's that time of, ooh, there's some little handles down here. Let's see what they do. That lowers me, and, I'm going to pause this and see if I can figure it out. Hold on one second. All right, no such luck. We'll just get going here. So we're going to just talk about these generally here, looking at the main objectives from Module 3 for, what we're going through here in this class right now. And then I'll talk about them generally, and then we'll flip through the slides and see how the textbook presented them. So the first objective is describe how the internet got its start. And so this would also be a really great ChatGPT. And you could go to ChatGPT and just ask, how did the internet get its start? I mean, why not? We're here. And so I'll just grab this right here and say, how did the internet get its start? And I guess it would have been just as fast to type that, but I'll paste that in. How did the internet get its start? Boop, 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 boop. And the internet started, it was part of ARPANET. And so ARPANET is now called DARPA. And DARPA is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And so it is the agency, in the United States that, creates all of the latest technology for defense and for, the security of our country. And so back in the day, they were concerned, rightly so, that if there was a nuclear war, communication wouldn't be possible across the country. Because back in the day, for people to communicate on the phone, we had switched networks. And so old operator phone switch, right? And so this was like in the old days when you need to make a phone call, you would call the operator, and then the operator would literally make a connection between, using a cable between you and somebody else. And so, if that cable between you and the other person got cut, you would no longer be talking to them. So if you think about like, LA talking to DC, and if the cable went through Denver and Denver got blown up, LA is no longer talking to DC because the cable that went through Denver got blown up by a nuclear bomb. This was a switched network for communication. And so what they came up with was, instead of doing a switch network, they went with packet switching. And so packet switching, let me just see, like, early internet map. And so packet switching had this setup where I'm like faultingly finding the words here. Packet switching had the setup where, like, okay, let's say this is, well, that's Utah. It's going through Utah, right? And we're down here in UC Santa Barbara. And we want to communicate with Carnegie here. And so let's say that right now, the way that happens is we break up our communication into packets. We address our packets. We throw them onto the network. And then there's computers who look at the address on every packet. And they figure out, where does that packet of information need to go? And so those computers are called routers. They determine the route that a packet needs to take to get to its destination. And so maybe the route that's being used, if we're talking to Carnegie, is it's going up here, and then it's going here, and then it's going over here, and then I don't know how, and then here, and then there to Carnegie, right? But Harvard gets blown up, okay? They're like, we're blowing up Harvard. And so now our packet used to be going through Harvard, but we can't get there anymore. Totally okay. Because when it gets here, it'll be like, hey, I can no longer route through that area. I'm going to route back up to here, back up to there, and then I'm going to go back over here and then down here, and I'm still getting to Carnegie. So you could find different routes. And then at the destination, these packets would get reassembled. So you take your message, you break it up into packets, automatically the software does it, and those packets get an address, go to Carnegie, and then you throw those packets onto the network, and then routers determine the route that the packet takes, and then when the packet gets to its destination by any route, so if some of the places it can't go through them anymore, it just will go a different route. When the packet gets to its destination, the messages made that the packet makes up, the message gets reassembled from the broken up packets, and then you have your message here. And that is literally how we're communicating right now. You're watching this over the internet, and all of the data that's flowing to you is getting broken up into little chunks, little packets. It's getting a little address. It's getting sent over the internet to you, and it's going through routers to find its way to you. And when it gets to your computer, it's getting reassembled and it's turning it into this, which is this video that you're watching with sound, and it's amazing. And the very first message on the internet, was low, L-O, and it was supposed to be log in, but the very first two letters were LO, and then the system crashed. And I think that is like, interestingly, I think that's super interesting. Like, that's almost like a sign of, like, for me, I could get a little metaphysical here. And metaphysics, the branch of philosophy, first principles, nature and being. And there's definitely things which are going on which are beyond our understanding. Like, if you just think about that as a thought exercise, you can't help but to grant that. There are things going on which are beyond your understanding. You have to grant that. That's just the simple first recognition in this thought exercise, that we're not omniscient. We do not know everything. And so that's a really important place to start when you have these kinds of philosophical explorations, because when you start at that place, it opens you to learning and it opens you to possibility. And so for me, I get a little metaphysical about this being the first message sent on the internet, because it stopped after LO, which is kind of like hello. It's kind of like hello. It's like there's a greater consciousness, maybe. I know it's just a speculation on my part, but it's a greater consciousness that didn't allow it all to go be log in. It was just like, hello, hello, right? Hello, this is the beginning of this really important tool to humanity. And so that's the first message sent on the internet. The first message was in October 29th of 1969, and it went from UCLA up to, see, the message was succinct, powerful, and prophetic, right? There we go. So even he's getting philosophical about it, right? And it was sent from UCLA and it's part of ARPANET to Stanford, from UCLA to Stanford. And at ARPANET, DARPA used to be called ARPA, and so this was ARPANET. Internet used to be called ARPANET. And ARPA was Advanced Research Project Agency Network, right? So that's why it's called Internet. It's network, right? Originally, it's called ARPANET. That's the internet. And the internet is different than the World Wide Web. We'll explore that in a second. But here is like, what you could read about what I just shared. So you could pause this and read that. And so here's the first two letters was LO. And then you could pause here and you could read this. And then you could pause here and you could read that right there. And then we could say, what is the difference? What is the difference between the internet and the World Wide Web? And when did the World Wide Web start, and who started it? Tell me that story, and include CERN in the story, please. So internet was 1969, and then the World Wide Web started in like the early 90s, 1993, and it was started by Tim Berners-Lee. And Tim Berners-Lee worked at this place called CERN, and CERN was the Center for European Research Nuclear, and so the European Organization for Nuclear Research. And they have, and it's not just like nuclear bombs, maybe they do that there, I don't know, but really it's more about particle accelerators, and nuclear being like nucleus, really small. And so this is actually a image of the particle accelerator. And so they accelerate particles here, and then they get them up to like super high speeds, and they smash them together. And when they smash them together, they collide and explode. And then in that explosion, other particles are emitted, including sometimes particles that have never existed before on this planet, to anyone's knowledge. And they think that by doing this, they're able to sort of gain greater insight into the creation of the universe. And so it's a research institute, and apparently it's $2 signs for expensive, and I'm not sure what that means. And yeah, you can watch videos on it on YouTube. It's kind of interesting to watch videos. But this dude, Tim Berners-Lee, worked there in the early 90s. And when he was working there, people were sending messages over the internet. But when those messages came across the internet, they came across the internet looking like, I don't know, so if we go to Wikipedia, they came across the internet looking like this. Okay, so let me just take all this text here. And when people sent messages over the internet, when Tim Berners-Lee worked there, they came over the internet looking like that. Okay, that's it. That's how messages used to come over the internet. It was just this big wall of text. And there was no formatting, and there was no links. And so Tim Berners-Lee said, wouldn't it be cool if we could kind of do a little programming thing, and we could say, you know, here I want to have a heading. And so I would have some notation, and I would say like H1, and I'd say about Tim Berners-Lee, right? And I'd have some, and then I'd end that heading like so, right? And then I would have a paragraph here, and I would have that paragraph there, and then there'd be a paragraph, and then I'd end that paragraph here like that. And this little markup language that he called, this is known as a markup language. This little markup language was called the hypertext markup language, or HTML, okay? And so that's HTML, and it's the hypertext markup language. It's a language to mark up your text, right? It's a language to mark up your text. We're marking up our text. And then you take this stuff and you send it to somebody, but instead of them just opening it and reading their text in a notepad or on a computer terminal, Tim Berners-Lee also created a piece of software called a browser, right? And so a browser allowed you to browse these documents, and the browser would then interpret or render the HTML into formatting, okay? And so if you look at HTML today, if we go to Wikipedia and we look at HTML, I don't know where my Wikipedia page went for Tim Berners-Lee. Not that, almost that. All right, here, if we look at this page and we right click it, right, this is a page that's being displayed in my browser Chrome. And if I right click this and I say view page source, it shows me all this HTML. And if you look here, you can see, right, like here is HTML, it's the opening thing. And if we scroll down here, there's some divs which divide things up. And if we continue to scroll down, I'm just gonna try to get to something that looks like something we just saw, where we have, here's a, you know, unordered list and a list item. And here's an anchor, which is a link, and it, you know, it's to reference on the page, you know, which is defined somewhere else, so early life. But I'm just looking for like paragraphs. And I don't think I have text wrapping turned on here, so we're not seeing the, oh, so here's some paragraphs, right? So here's a paragraph starting, and there's where the paragraph ends. And then here's another paragraph starting, and there's where it ends. And so those are paragraphs right there. But this looks like nonsense for us to read this. It's nonsensical. But when this is sent to a browser, the browser looks at all this and then renders it into this, right? And so the browser, you know, that formatting is designed, the language is designed to be read by a browser and to be turned into this. And so that's how the internet was created, and that's how the World Wide Web was created, and that's what HTML is, and that's what browsers are, and that's who Tim Berners-Lee is. And he created, you know, here you can see the World Wide Web and HTML, and the URL system and HTTP. And so, you know, kind of a rock star, pretty amazing. He did all that. And so that revolutionized humanity. And I'm just going to bring this down in size. Those are all really big. All right, so that's Tim Berners-Lee. That's the internet. That's the World Wide Web. And here's like the original ARPANET back in 1969. So we had UCLA and Stanford, and then, you know, I guess Utah and UC Santa Barbara. And so early days, man, early days. And that's going from a switch network to packet switching network. And that's DARPA, which used to be called ARPA. And I like to think of DARPA like in the James Bond movies. James Bond, Q, and Q lab, right? So when James Bond would go into Q's lab to get like special devices and things like that, like here's Q's lab, right? You'd go in here and like they'd have different devices. Here's Q's lab, you know, where they would create special devices, you know, which were technological innovations that allowed James Bond to do what James Bond does. And so that's the way I think about ARPA and DARPANET. ARPANET and DARPA. DARPA is where those new cutting tools for warfare are created. Kind of crazy, we're a crazy species. So that's the internet, that's the World Wide Web. How does data travel on the internet? It gets broken up into packets. Those packets have addresses. They get thrown on the network of all these routers. Routers are just computers running special software where they could read the address on packets and find the best route for that packet to its destination. Evaluate tools and technology used to communicate and collaborate with large groups of people on the web. So how do we communicate and collaborate with people on the web? Video, YouTube, Zoom, video conferencing, right? Text messages, phone calls, all that stuff. Summarize technologies used for personal communications over the web. So technologies used for personal communications, WhatsApp, messaging, Facebook, phone calls. Describe how cloud technologies are used to create, store, and share files. So the cloud, when you hear about people refer to the cloud, that's just like computers that you use, which are somebody else's, to do stuff. I know it's a super general definition, but that's what it is. You're using somebody else's computers to do stuff. So that's the cloud. And so Microsoft has computers, and that cloud has, and so does Google. And so I'm going to use Google as an example. And so I store stuff at Google's cloud. So if I come here and I come over to my little waffle menu here, and this can be called a waffle menu because it looks like a waffle, or you could call it a dot menu, whatever. I could go to Google Drive, and on Google Drive, I have like, different things. I've consolidated, and then I have school. And if I come in here, like here are all my classes for different semesters, and then here are my lectures that we're doing right now. But all this is stored on Google's computers. And so this is the cloud. I could store stuff on the cloud. I could store stuff, which is the same as saying I could store stuff on Google's computers or Microsoft's computers. That's the cloud. I could create documents. I could do spreadsheets. I could do presentations. I could do videos. That's new. I could do forms, which is fun to explore. And so that's storing stuff on the cloud. And you use them to create, store, and share files, right? Like I could upload stuff there, create stuff there. Describe how business is conducted using the internet. That's a massive topic. But you could say that there's a couple different categories of business. There's like B2B, businesses who are using the internet to do business with other businesses. There's B2C, businesses that are using the internet to do business with consumers, B2C, business to consumer. And then there's like C2C, which is businesses who facilitate consumers doing things with other consumers. And that would be like eBay, one consumer selling something, another consumer's buying something. They're brokerage sites that bring people together. And then, business on the internet, there's also like marketing and Facebook and entertainment and all kinds of things, right? Summarize precautions you should take when doing business online. You would definitely, a couple of things that you absolutely want to know about are to freeze your credit and then also use credit cards. Use credit cards. Okay, so there's like two things which are huge for you to know about. And the reason you want to use credit cards is because the Fair Credit Billing Act. And so here's the World Wide Web. I think, did we go through this already? So yeah, pause the video and read this. And then pause the video and read this. And then pause the video and read this. And so we could say, is it the Fair Credit Billing Act, Fair Credit Billing Act that protects American consumers with their credit cards from fraud? Is this what allows a consumer to contest a fraudulent charge and not have to pay it? So hopefully I get a yes here. I'm kind of hoping that's a yes. I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, so the Fair Credit Billing Act. So you could, when this is done, pause the video, but you want to use your credit card because there's something called the Fair, I won't go back to that. It's called the Fair Credit Billing Act, which is a law in America, which says that if you have a fraudulent transaction on your card, you're not responsible for that. And the credit card company has to take responsibility for that. So you can pause the video and you could read this here. There's like a $50 limit, but in most cases, credit card companies are $50 amount which you are responsible for, but most credit card companies just overlook that. But you can pause the video and read about that, and you could also pause the video and read about this. But anytime you have a fraudulent charge, you just call your credit card company and say, I want to contest this charge. And so to do that, you need to first have tried to resolve the situation with the vendor, and so what that might look like is, like, recently I ordered some software on the internet and it came with a trial. It was like a free 10-day trial, and after a couple of days I'm like, this isn't going to work for me, and so I asked to cancel it. I emailed the company. I said, I want to cancel this. I don't see how to cancel it on your website. Can you cancel this and please refund that $60 you charged me? And I had a couple of back and forth exchanges, and then it just kind of stopped. And so I had to message them once more, and I'd say, will you please refund this? And they were like, okay, it's being refunded. And so now I have this chain of communication with the vendor through email, and then I'll watch, and when I get my next credit card statement, I'll look, did they refund the money to me? And if they didn't, I'll contact the credit card company and I'll say, hey, these people had a free trial, and I took them up on the offer of a free trial, and then I canceled it after 4 days, but they charged me for membership for the software, and I don't want the software. And I had this exchange of emails. I'll send them to you. Here they are. I had this exchange of emails where I was trying to get it canceled, and they said they'd cancel it, but they never did. Can you give me my money back? And then the credit card company will say, yeah, absolutely. We'll give you your money back. We'll investigate it. They investigate it first, and it takes like a month or two. But then they investigate it, and then often they rule in favor of consumers. And so it's a super easy process, but you're always protected with your credit card. So if you have a fraudulent charge, in that situation, you're protected. But also if somebody uses your credit card and there are fraudulent charges, you're protected. So you never have to pay for credit card protection, because by law, credit card companies have to extend that to you, which is why they also sell it. And they'll sell it with a few additional little benefits, and they'll charge you for it. But you don't need to pay for that. Because by law, it's already given to you, and all credit card companies know that. And when you call them and just say, I want to contest it, they direct you to the place where you contest it. But most Americans don't know that that's one of the benefits of a credit card. So look at what you learn by coming to school, and look at what you learn by actually taking the time to watch these lectures. So use your credit cards at all times online. That protects you. And monitor your credit cards to make sure you're not getting any charges. And then choose a credit card that you like. I like Amazon Prime credit card. Like I think that's a good one. That works for our family because we use Amazon a bit. All right. So the next thing you want to do business online is freeze your credit. And so there's 3 credit bureaus. And so we'll come over here and you could read. I think we did all that reading here, right? So here we go. You could pause it and read here, and then you could pause it and read here just in case we did it. But can you tell me about the 3 credit bureaus in America and freezing your credit? Bada boom, bada bing. So there's 3 credit bureaus in America: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And these 3 credit bureaus track your credit. Anytime you want to go do something with financing, buy a car, get a loan, buy a house, your credit gets checked. It gets checked at one or at multiple of these credit bureaus. And these credit bureaus are keeping track of how good are you at paying your bills on time, and how much do you spend, and all of that stuff, and how much do you make. And it's a world of information, and their job as organizations, businesses, is to gather a bunch of data on you and issue some sort of a credit rating on you. And so anytime anybody wants to get financing, get a loan, they have to have their credit checked. The people who are going to give them a loan are going to check their credit before they lend them money. So if you freeze your credit, what that means is that if somebody, you or anybody else, tries to run a credit check on you, the three credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion, say we're not authorized to release this person's credit information. Their credit is frozen. And so what that means is that nobody's going to be able to hijack your personality and get loans in your name, buy a house, get money, buy a car, and then leave you with the debt. So freezing your credit is super important. You can pause the video and you could read here, and you can pause the video and you could read here. And by freezing your credit, when you need to use your credit, you could just thaw it. You could unfreeze it for like 4 days or something, like you're buying a car, and then the car dealership will check your credit, and then it'll go back to being frozen. So you are the one who has the password to unthaw it, and then it gets refrozen automatically after the unthaw period. And again, this is a free service. Credit bureaus have to offer it. It's a little bit hidden, so you gotta Google, because it's a little bit of a burden on them. It's not the best for their business. And if you go to their homepage, they'll sell you a service where they have a few extra little bells and whistles that they add on to freezing your credit, and they'll charge you to do this exact thing. But you can do it for free if you just Google Equifax freeze credit, Experian freeze credit, TransUnion freeze credit. You'll be taken to the page on their site, wherever it's located, and it's not a page that's going to be widely advertised on their homepage for some of these credit bureaus. And then there you could just create an account and say, freeze my credit, and your credit's frozen. I froze my credit and froze the credit for everybody in my immediate family, including my parents, and that way nobody's identity is going to get hijacked. So that's the next really important thing you need to know about doing business online, is you want to freeze your credit and you want to use credit cards. And then pay your cards off every month. Explain what web browsers are and describe their common features. So we talked about web browsers and common features. You got this URL bar up here, you got bookmarks. You could come over here to these 3 dots and you could go into like settings, and you could say, hey, what I want it to do when it starts up, continue where you left off. What search engine do I want to use? I want to use Google, right? And so you could go into settings there. That's web browsers. Explain what a URL is and discuss its main parts. This is a URL up here. So if we go to, like, I don't know, North Shore Surfing, and then we go to like North Shore School of Surfing. This looks good. And then up here we have northshoreschoolofsurfing.com. So this is the top level domain. This is the entire domain right here. So I think this is the domain right here, North Shore School of Surfing, and .com's top level domain. And then these paths take you to different resources at this domain. And so that's that's how you that's what a URL is up there. And URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator, and people also just refer to this as like the web address or the domain. Describe tools used to navigate the web. I don't know, Google search, right? Like, what else is there? Bing. Describe the types of tools used to search the web and summarize strategies used to refine search results. So, I don't know, searching the web, when you search at Google, you're looking for shorter phrases. You could also do this voice where you just talk to it. You could also use this camera where you take a picture of something and it searches for that picture. And you could also put quotes around things. So, you could say, like, I want to search for North Shore exactly, right? So North Shore exactly is going to give me, different results. So then maybe than otherwise. So there's different techniques. You could ask ChatGPT. Describe how to evaluate a website to ensure its appropriate use for research purposes. So the main point of this is don't believe everything you read online. There's a lot of schlock out there, and you also have to even question news sources and research papers, because sometimes companies will fund professors and give them grants to do research. Hey, here's $1 million. Like, do this research and tell us, whether or not you think our product is safe for consumers. Well, obviously, if a professor does research and finds out the product's not safe, they're not going to get a grant from that company next year. So professors would have a very vested interest in returning results that speak well to the company, or in bearing results, meaning they get results which are negative and they just go directly back to the company and say, hey, this is what we found, this is going to look really bad on your company. So I don't feel like ethically that I can report otherwise, but I'd love to help your company. And I'm just going to give you this data here, and we're going to stop this research, and maybe you guys could give us a grant next year, and we could look into something which would not reflect so negatively on your company if we were to actually publicize it. And then the company would be like, oh, that's great, thank you. How would we fix this? Maybe, or who knows, right? But a lot of people make money off of reporting things and coming up with results that industry with vested interests want those specific results. And so you really have to question everything that's out there. You really have to question it, and you have to dig in and look at like, where is this data coming from, and do they have any ulterior motives? And then you just have to be vigilant for your own safety and welfare and well-being, because there's an entire machine which is designed, and just through the unfolding of human nature. And it isn't taking into consideration all the time, or a lot of the time, maybe even your best interest. And there's a lot of ways to speak about this. So I don't know if I've mentioned it in this class before, but a lot of capitalism is geared towards making you unhappy and discontent and feeling deficient and insufficient. And the reason why is because if you're content, if you feel satisfied and sufficient and like you have enough and you are enough, you're not a good consumer. Because if you're content, you're not a good consumer. It's like, no, thank you, I'm content. I don't need any more. But if you're discontent, if you feel deficient, if you feel a sense of insufficiency, you are now a good consumer. So all of capitalism is geared towards making you feel discontent, or significant. There's significant forces within capitalism geared towards making you feel discontent, deficient, insufficient. And billions of dollars are spent every year, and the best psychologists in the world are paid large sums of money to help figure out, how do we make people feel more deficient and insufficient and discontent. Now, it isn't couched in that context, but that is, make no bones about it, make no mistakes about it, that is the ultimate outcome of that process of trying to get Americans, consumers, people all around the world to consume more. The entire outcome of that is to make them feel insufficient, deficient, and discontent, and like they need to get more, because when they feel like they need to get more, they're going to buy stuff, and that's what makes the companies money. And so you really need to be heads up on, like, evaluating what kind of information is being directed at you, what is its impact upon you, and what are the motives of the people sending that information towards you. And you need to do that because, if you aren't vigilant to it, you will suffer, and it will cost you your health and ultimately your life. And so, you can look at the American obesity from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and you can see how this has changed over the last 30, 40 years. And so here's where things were back in 1990. And white is no data. Light blue is less than 10% of the population was obese. This blue is 10 to 14% of the population is obese. And this blue, which is like, maybe there's one right there, is that 15 to 20% of the population is obese. Well, now obesity is 42% of Americans are obese, so it's even worse than in 2010. 42% of Americans are obese, and so maybe this is a slide here. Can't really see that, but whatever. And then 72% of the population is overweight. And so partly that's because we've had all these messages directed towards us of consume more, eat more. And how do we get more people? Let's give them bigger cups. Let's put bigger straws into the cup, so they're actually sucking down more. Let's open up the size of the hole on the soda cans so they drink it faster and they drink more quickly. Like this is like, they study it, like how do we get people to drink more soda? And then they figure that out, and then they just make you do it, right? They figure out what makes humans do that, and then they just like it's a system, and they figure it out, and then they make more money, and then people get obese, and you have diabetes, and you have all the things that go with obesity, and it's tragic, but heads up, right? Heads up. Now that you got the heads up, you could start to be vigilant and protect yourself. So evaluate information that's coming towards you, and ask yourself, what are your ulterior motives of the people sending this information, and what I need to do to build my best life. Demonstrate an understanding of internet related ethical issues. So you just want to be super careful what you share online. And I guess the first thing I'd say is like stranger danger. Like don't share personal information. And if you're ever going to go meet somebody in person that you met online, make sure you meet them in a very public location at a time where there's lots of people around. And then also never send like personal information to anybody that you don't know. And so just be really careful of that. And when you're younger, we all have the biological imperative to continue the survival of the human race. So that is built into the vast majority of humans, to have that need to reproduce. And part of that is finding a partner, and the entire process of courtship and mating. But in that process, you really don't want to send naked selfies to anybody, because that is something that's out there for a long time, and that could end up in bad ways. So you just want to be really careful about, that. So, and there's a great movie which kind of illustrates that, and it's one of the things we're going to talk about in one of our discussions. But the movie is Disconnect, the movie, and so here it is right here, and that goes over that. So there we go. And the next one is demonstrating an ability to conduct yourself on the internet in an ethical manner. So we'll talk about ethics a little bit further into the course, and developing our own moral code and building it from the ground up. And what does it take to build your own moral code, and why it's in your best interest. And the foundations for building your own moral code is, like what's in your very best interest, right? What's in your very best interest? And if you look at the research in what's in your very best interest, there's this great TED Talk, the Harvard study on happiness. And so you could go to this TED Talk here on YouTube, What Makes a Good Life, Robert Waldinger. And
answer this question.
I'm just going to pause this, and we'll go away from it while this plays for a minute, because I don't want to look at that while we're talking. And so when you watch that TED Talk, which I highly recommend, what you'll learn is that the quality of your life depends upon the quality of your relationships. And so here's the TED Talk. And you can see this guy is just like he just looks wise and friendly. But when you realize that the quality of your life depends upon the quality of your relationships, it's in your own best interest to build quality relationships. To build quality relationships, you have to act in a pro-social manner. Now in academia, in sociology, pro-social means you're doing things that are in the interest of the group, right? It's pro, positive, social, group, and you're doing things in the interest of the group. And what does that mean? You're treating other people nicely. You're getting the door for somebody. You're not stealing that which isn't, you're not stealing from other people. You're picking up trash as you walk across campus. You're not leaving your grocery cart out in the middle of the parking lot and being like, I'm giving somebody a job. No, you're not. You're being inconsiderate and you're not contributing to the collective whole, right? And you should push it in, because if you block a parking space at Costco with parking with a grocery cart, and it's a crowded Saturday, somebody's going to have to get out of their car, move your cart because you were too lazy to push it into the stall where they go, and you weren't thinking of other people, and you hadn't built your own moral code yet from the ground up. And somebody's going to have to get out of their car, move it, because you didn't do it. They're going to have to do it. So you pick up after yourself, you have good manners, you're polite towards other people, you give people the benefit of the doubt, you don't steal. If you find something that's not yours, you ask yourself, what would I want done if the situation was reversed, and you get it back to the person. I bought a case of wine one time at Costco, 12 bottles of wine. I got home and looked at the receipt. They charged me for one bottle. So I went back to Costco and I paid for the other 11 because, you know, if it's my store, that's what I'd hope. And it's a pro-social thing. And when you live with integrity, you develop, something called satyagraha. And satyagraha is a concept that Gandhi ascribed to, and it means holding firmly to truth, and it's also known as truth force or soul force. And so satyagraha is this idea that if you live with great integrity and friendliness and pro-social orientation, and you give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and you treat people as well as you can, that is a force. It's a soul force that comes and emanates from your being that could have profound change on your entire life and everything and everyone around you. And Gandhi, using this concept, was able to get rid of the British imperialism in India and lead all of India to freedom. And then Martin Luther King, using this concept, which he learned from Gandhi, was able to lead the civil rights movement in America and make good progress towards more equality for all people in our country. So that's those are the main things of this chapter. I am talked out of this chapter. I'm done, right? And another 40-minute video. So I'm not going to go through these slides because we covered everything, and the slides will just drain us to look through them. But pretty much everything in there is what we talked about, and you should look through them. Or read through the textbook. Okay, so do those two things. I had a good time. I hope you did too. Catch you next time.